One of the most important aspects to our favorite TV shows is the characters outside the main cast who inhabit their worlds and make them feel alive. These characters are important because they flesh out the world and make them feel like an actual place that people live in. Sometimes these side characters even go off to contain a memorable role across their franchises or their series, like Shadow the Hedgehog. However, there is the other side where characters that once inhabited their world seemingly vanish without a trace. And today that's exactly what we're going to be covering, as I'm going to be exploring 5 characters from anime, cartoons, and video games that have disappeared. Number 5. Shou Tucker, Fullmetal Alchemist 2003. Over the years, we have seen many shows stray away from their source material, and most of the time when they do, they end up dropping the ball, like with Game of Thrones, The Walking Dead, and Tokyo Ghoul. But sometimes we get really lucky with good adaptations that make changes for a different story trying to be told, like with Invincible, The Boys, and Kick-Ass. And I personally think Fullmetal Alchemist 2003 did an amazing job moving forward with the material that Hiromu Arakawa had established and carving their own path. And when I think of the 2003 anime and what it did right, the first character I always think of is the terrifyingly interesting Shou Tucker. Shou Tucker first appears when he takes in the Elric brothers, Edward and Alphonse, while they study for their state alchemy exam. While the brothers stay at Shou Tucker's house, they quickly befriend his daughter Nina and their dog Alexander. Later, Tucker reveals details about his past, including the painful fact that his wife left him because of his obsessive focus on work, and a dark secret emerges. Tucker admits to having created a chimera, a grotesque combination of two beings. Tucker says that he did this in the past to earn his state alchemy license, but his creation starved to death soon after. The story takes a darker turn when Tucker is put under pressure from the military officer Boss Gran to create another chimera to renew his license and avoid being evicted. Fearing for his daughter's safety, Tucker fuses Nina and Alexander into a chimera, which horrifyingly recognizes Edward Elric as its brother. The Elric brothers soon realize the chilling truth that Tucker's previous chimera was actually his wife. Enraged, Edward attacks Shou Tucker, but Alphonse intervenes, keeping the situation from escalating. Tucker is then placed under house arrest and eventually taken by military police. Edward attempts to free the Nina/Alexander chimera by causing the truck transporting Tucker to crash, but despite his efforts, the chimera is ultimately euthanized by the vigilant Scar. Shou Tucker is reportedly executed by firing squad, but in the anime's alternative timeline, it is revealed that he is transferred to the infamous Lab 5, where he continues his alchemical experiments. Once inside Lab 5, Tucker creates chimeras for the military, becoming the sole researcher capable of controlling them. In a terrifying turn, Tucker is fused with a canine entity, transforming into a monstrous chimera with alchemy-fused glasses. Along with this, Tucker's desperation to bring Nina back from the dead leads him to aid the homunculi, believing they may hold the key to reviving his daughter. Tucker continues his dark experiments, carrying dolls of Nina as a vessel for her soul, and later joins the chimeras working for Greed. Despite the defeat of Greed and the death of many chimeras, Tucker continues his quest, now working under Frank Archer. In the 2003 anime, at some point when Alphonse receives the Philosopher's Stone, Tucker manipulates him into participating in a human transmutation experiment. Sadly, Tucker's lack of resolve results in the Nina doll remaining a lifeless zombie-like entity. In one of the final scenes of the series, Tucker is seen frantically scribbling equations on a wall, still obsessed with finding a way to revive Nina. Tucker's fate was purposely left ambiguous. Whether he was arrested again for his crimes or continued his fruitless search for a way to bring back his daughter remains unknown. Tucker's story is a tragic one, driven by his relentless obsession with alchemy and his willingness to sacrifice anything, even his humanity, in hopes of restoring his lost daughter. But what always made his story stand out to me was how he represents the evil pressures within the military. I also love, in comparison to FMA Brotherhood, how FMA 2003 shows us throughout the Nina episode that something is going to go wrong, making us dread the inevitable.
Nina.
Although I appreciate how the FMA Brotherhood anime uses the lighthearted tone to make the Nina incident hit hard for shock factor, I love the horror aspect of 2003, where it feels like there is just so much build-up for the Nina incident. As far as we know though, Shou Tucker is a lost character, as he didn't appear in the final FMA 2003 movie, Conqueror of the Shambhala. So I recently asked you guys in a community poll what you thought of FMA 2003 Shou Tucker, and I feel like this comment summed up his fate perfectly. Honestly, I liked what they did. He got a fate worse than death, living in his delusions and his self-made hell. And I couldn't agree more. No matter what you guys have to say about the 2003 anime, I personally believe that what they did with Shou Tucker, they did amazingly well. Number 4. Eris from the Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy. Eris, the goddess of discord and chaos, is truly a character that embodied the phrase drama queen. Eris first appears in the Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy in the episode To Eris Human. In this episode, we learn that despite being the ultimate agent of chaos, she has a somewhat relatable issue, her dad cutting her off. So it turns out the ultimate goddess of chaos is used to living the high life off of her father's allowance, but after some mishap involving an infernal apple, she's grounded and forced to get a job. Physically, Eris is stunning, combining beauty and power in a way only a goddess can. Her style is straight out of Greek mythology, featuring a flowing white dress, gold bracelets, and a silver tiara to top it all off. Though Eris once had perfectly normal teeth, a notable gap in her front teeth would later become part of her signature look. Personality-wise, Eris is a whirlwind. She's a seductress with a sharp wit, and her personality shifts dramatically. At times, Eris is the stereotypical valley girl, spouting phrases like and totally, only to flip the script with a sudden refined British accent. This contrast reflects the chaos she thrives in, constantly shifting between personas and causing confusion wherever she goes. Her main weapon is the Apple of Discord, a magical golden apple that can transform into whatever she needs to stir up trouble. Eris's impact on the world of Billy and Mandy is undeniable. From transforming into various forms and causing mayhem to her unforgettable roles in episodes like Huggy Huggy Stuffy Bears and Chicken Ball Z. Needless to say, whenever she is on the show, she consistently makes things interesting. Unfortunately, Eris's appearances were few and far between, and she didn't appear in the final Billy and Mandy special, Underfist Halloween Bash. Now, the reason for this is because Underfist was supposed to spin off into multiple specials, and Eris would have been the antagonist of the first episode, Underfist vs. the Dinosaurs. If you've ever wanted to learn more about the history of Underfist, my friend and fellow content creator Zero Omens actually made a full video on the history of it, and that video is actually what inspired me to put Eris as an entry on this list. I'll have his channel linked down below, and I really suggest you guys go check him out. He always puts 110% into his videos. But unfortunately, since the series never got made, it seems that Eris is going to be lost forever to the memory of time. Number 3. Squilliam Fancyson. Squilliam is the ultimate foil to Squidward. He's everything that Squidward isn't. He's wealthy, he's successful, and completely convinced of his own superiority. From his 6 tentacles to his signature maroon smoking jacket and purple ascot, Squilliam is living the high life and making sure that Squidward is well aware of it. Squilliam made his first appearance in the episode Band Geeks, where he challenges Squidward to organize a band to play at the Bubble Bowl, all because his own band couldn't make it. What Squilliam doesn't know though is that Squidward has a little bit of help from his friends, plus he ends up pulling off one of the most memorable performances in SpongeBob history, leading to Squilliam's utter humiliation. As I mentioned earlier, Squilliam is the ultimate foil to Squidward, and his wealth is impossible to ignore. He owns a private yacht, a heliport, a private island, and even a balloon/casino. He is the ultimate embodiment of luxury and status, but what makes Squilliam truly unforgettable is the way he treats Squidward. Squilliam doesn't just want to be successful, he wants to make Squidward feel like a complete failure. It's like he gets some sort of twisted pleasure from seeing Squidward's jealousy and frustration. This all stems from their rivalry in high school bands, where Squilliam was the star and Squidward was left in the dust. And that rivalry has only grown since then. Despite being a total jerk, Squilliam has a lot of memorable moments throughout the series. In the episode House Fancy, Squilliam's luxurious mansion is featured on the show of the same name. Squidward, in a fit of jealousy, decides to call the show's host, Nicholas Withers, and claim that his house is better. But when Squidward's home is destroyed in a series of comedic disasters, Withers praises it as a work of art. When this happens, Squilliam is left in tears, upstaged once again by Squidward. Then, in the episode Professor Squidward, Squilliam shows just how much influence he has over the world of music. He's offered a job as a music teacher at the Bikini Bottom's prestigious music college, But when Squidward impersonates him to steal the job, Squilliam swoops in and reveals the truth, and Squidward is arrested for impersonation. But despite all his failures, Squilliam's sense of superiority never wavers. Even after he's been humiliated, he continues to flaunt his wealth and excess ego at every turn. Squilliam's appearances, although rare, always leave a lasting impression. Over the years, Squilliam has made a few surprise appearances, like in Back to the Past where we see him putting up a sign, and Code Yellow where he briefly appears as a replacement for Squidward's nose in a very strange medical situation. But outside of those moments, he's been largely absent from the spotlight since the episode Back to the Past from Season 7. This is really a shame to me because I think that Squidward is at his best when he overcomes Squilliam's bullying. And I feel like Squilliam was just a really good villain that they could have used more. One thing we should take note of is that Squilliam's voice actor, who shares the same voice as Squidward, even struggles to remember his name, so maybe this character is just largely forgotten by the staff. But I'm definitely curious to know if you guys would like to see Squilliam return. Number 2. Red Herring from A Pup Named Scooby-Doo. Now, I'm going to be very conservative with the footage I use for the series. I actually did a short covering Red Herring, but it got blocked by Warner Brothers, so I'm going to stick with screenshots for the century. Now, if you don't remember, Red Herring was the Coolsville neighborhood bully, which led to Fred Jones accusing him as a prime suspect for basically any of the town's crimes. Now, what's funny about Red Herring is that his name and his use in the story is actually a play on the real world meaning behind a red herring. So, in case you didn't know, a red herring is a clue or a piece of information that is intended to be misleading or distracting. Now, in some of the earlier episodes, red herring being considered a suspect did make some sense because the gang would find him near the scene of the crime, but as the show went on, Fred accusing Red Herring of committing the crimes they were trying to solve made less and less sense. Now, Red Herring never did end up being the culprit, except for one episode, and I believe it's one of the most memorable episodes of A Pup Named Scooby-Doo, and that's the Season 3 episode, Night of the Boogie Biker. In this episode, the gang gets sick of Fred accusing Red Herring of committing crimes that he obviously would have no motive to commit, so they convince Fred to not accuse Red Herring of any crimes for 24 hours. He takes them up on the challenge, feeling confident for 30 seconds, before then immediately struggling to not accuse Red Herring from that point forward within the episode. In this episode, the Scooby-Doo gang is hired by Red Herring's aunt to find her lost motorcycle. Eventually, the gang finds some clues that leads them to Red Herring being the culprit. However, it turns out Red didn't steal his aunt's bike, he took it to get it cleaned up and added a sidecar as a birthday present. This episode really showed there was more under the surface to who Red Herring was as a person, but we didn't see much from him after this throughout the series, but the same jokes we had seen before. Now, since A Pup Named Scooby-Doo is a prequel series, we would hope that Red Herring would be featured again in a modern Scooby-Doo series, but although he hasn't been prominently featured in any episodes, he has made a few cameo appearances. His most notable cameo was in Season 1, Episode 16 of Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated, where we see Red as a soccer player for Crystal Cove High School.
No way! That was a clean steal!
After this, as far as I know, his last appearance was in the comic book Crisis of Infinite Scoobies, where we see a young Fred once again accuse Red Herring of committing the crimes, but young Fred is immediately shut down by the others. Now, this comic book came out in 2019, so much like the case with Roxanne from a Goofy movie, this could show that Red Herring is still on Warner Brothers' minds the same way that Roxanne may still be on Disney's minds. I don't know about you guys, but I always found Red Herring to be very memorable, and I hope he returns in the future, but I want to know what you guys think. Are there some hidden cameos I haven't found, and would you like to see Red Herring return in the future? Number 1. Agent Ed from Tonic Trouble. I can't tell you guys how long I have wanted to talk about Tonic Trouble in a video. If you don't know what Tonic Trouble is, to give a brief summary, Tonic Trouble was a game developed by Ubisoft for the Nintendo 64 as an engine tester for Rayman 2. The game follows the character Agent Ed, who is a klutz that accidentally spills a can of tonic onto Earth, and it causes vegetables and other life forms to become anthropomorphic and evil. As Agent Ed, it's your job to fix the mistakes you caused and collect the items scattered throughout the game and give them to this professor, so he can make a device to send you to the final level and save the day. This game was overall poorly received, mostly due to the poor camera angles, but I personally really enjoyed it. This game has a lot of great quirky humor, like this part where if you keep re-entering this room and refight the corn boss, they infinitely try to take revenge for their fallen family members. On top of this, the game has a really good Alice in Wonderland type atmosphere atmosphere, where everything can be bright and colorful and then turn dark and gritty in a moment's notice. Although I personally enjoyed this game, it wasn't critically well received, and a big part of this is because the game was released 8 weeks before Rayman 2, and if you know your history, Rayman 2 was groundbreaking for Rayman's 3D debut, which made Tonic Trouble look underwhelming in comparison. The main criticism the game received outside of its comparison to Rayman was over its camera. A lot of people found it to be disorienting, and I can say for myself that I more than once backtracked into the wrong room because of it. With that being said, I love the look of the areas in this game. As I mentioned, the game can be bright and colorful, but then turn dark and gritty in a moment's notice, and you can really see this in the game's areas like North Plain. This area just gives the vibes of an abandoned fortress that has been taken over for use once again. With the gaps in the land and the feeling that you can fall off into the Shadow Realm at any moment, this area almost makes you feel like you're not supposed to be here. I personally really enjoyed Tonic Trouble, but as you guys know, this is a missing characters list, so what fate befell Agent Ed from Tonic Trouble? Well, Ed wouldn't go on to get another game, and the Rayman franchise would continue to be successful, with Ed largely being forgotten outside of a few notable cameos. The first is in the second episode of the Rayman TV series called No Parking, where Agent Ed cameos as a Jack-in-the-Box after a car crash. After this though, Agent Ed's next appearance would be in a cutscene for Rayman Arena, where we can see a skeleton in the background of a cutscene. This was essentially the developers telling us that they aren't going to do anything with Agent Ed in the future, and it's really sad to see. However, this wouldn't be the last time we would see Agent Ed, as he would then cameo in the game Beyond Good and Evil, where Ed can be seen in a commercial within the game. Ed's final appearance so far is in a cameo for Captain Laserhawk, a Blood Dragon remix, which is a Netflix series that aired on October 19th, 2023. In the second episode of the series, Ed's face appears on one of the picket signs carried by the anti-alien protesters. Now, this shouldn't be a sign that Ed is going to be returning anytime soon. It's simply an Easter egg put in by the creators, but it's a really clever nod to Ed's origin of being an alien, and considering the damage he did to Earth, people would actually be against him. That being said, I would really like to see Ed return. I'm just surprised that they never did anything like having him be a second player in a Rayman game or having him act as a costume or anything. But guys, that's the end of the missing characters list. Let me know in the comments down below what you guys thought of the list and who your favorite entries were, and if you have any characters you would like me to cover in the future. Also, please consider subscribing and hitting the bell so you can be notified as these videos release. I've been hearing that some of my subscribers aren't getting my videos, so it's the best way to make sure that you can see them as they come out. Alrighty though guys, you all take care, have a good one.